Hi, Chami. Welcome to the very last episode of the Meet Me in My Corner Season 1. I am Dr. K and I'm your host. So it's actually crazy that this is the very last episode of the season. I was sharing this with a neighbor of mine and she was shocked. She was like, what? You guys have seasons and podcasts? And like, is there like a theme? And yes, guys, we have to have seasons. You need to have seasons of rest. This is what allows you to recalibrate, to go back to the drawing board and ensure that you're giving out good work. If you keep pushing yourself when you're really tired, I know it's just not going to be as great as I want it to be. And in terms of the theme, it's so cool how God will always put you back onto your journey. So I knew that I wanted to use the podcast to, be vulnerable and to find home in myself. And I guess that was the overarching theme for the first season. And I did, accomplish that by pushing you to be vulnerable, by, imploring you to think about people pleasing and how it really shouldn't have a space in your life anymore. I have implored you to think about the type of people that you have in your life, whether it's your partner or your friends, your jealousy, what does it mean for you and how you should work with that, your inner critic. We've spoken about discipline. We've spoken about how to empower yourself. And for girls who look like me, we've spoken about what it means to be a dark-skinned woman and honestly and truly looking at that, in a deeper sense. So I really thought the next topic would actually also be quite relevant to this conversation. But first, I'm going to read a quote to you and then we're going to get into it. So it says that we achieve inner health only through forgiveness. The forgiveness not only of others, but also of ourselves. So yes, we're speaking about forgiving yourself or self-forgiveness. Forgiveness in general is a difficult thing to do. I think a lot of us believe that the longer we hold on to the hurt or the anger, it will justify the amount of pain that we were forced to feel or that was inflicted on us, whether it was by another person or by ourselves. And there's a myriad of reasons why you'd need to forgive yourself. You could need to forgive yourself maybe because you didn't complete your studies when you were very capable of doing so, or for staying in a loveless or a relationship that wasn't really conducive for your greater good, and you ignored red flags that were pretty obvious. You could need forgiveness for yourself because you couldn't kick a habit, and now you have to deal with the life, lifelong, complications or repercussions, permanent repercussions of that. Or you could need to forgive yourself because you couldn't put aside your ego, and that meant that you lost a relationship or you lost an opportunity. Whatever it is, we have all had events in our lives, whether they're big or small, that have put us in a corner where we've been hypercritical of ourselves, felt a lot of shame, felt a lot of guilt, and required self-forgiveness for us to get to a place where we feel healthier and more secure with who we are and feel more secure with being with ourselves. Because remember, you'll never spend more time with anyone else. You'll always spend all your time with yourself. So that time that you spend with yourself needs to be comfortable, can't be avoidant, yeah. So here we believe in vulnerability, and you are in my corner. So for the very last time in the season, I'm going to share a very intimate part of my life that required a lot of forgiveness from me and really pushed me, truly, truly pushed me. So I had a friend in high school. Her and I used to get along throughout high school at different points. We weren't as close, but we were close friends. But we truly, truly became very close in matric. That's when I think our friendship started to really bloom or to blossom, but it came into full bloom once we were in varsity, and specifically first year of varsity, which is still till this day the best year I've ever had. I am sorry to my daughter, but that year, guys, I cannot describe it. I was so happy. There was nothing that could contend with my happiness. Yes, there was some speed bumps. Yes, there were times that were really, really low, but the highs were very high. They were very, very high. I felt independent. There was a sense of freedom and all of that. Okay. So we chose to go to the same varsity. It wasn't a shared decision. We just found ourselves there. And because we had this heritage of being from the same school, we banded together, and we banded together with another friend. And from there, because she was so charismatic, such a wonderful person to be around, she really drew a lot of people to us. And we created a good and a cool friendship circle or friendship group. We even had a name. It was quite funny. We didn't give ourselves that name though. So I'll never allow people to tell me that that is the true history of us. No, somebody decided to name us that name, but whatever, we took it and it was fun. I had a great sense of belonging, and I think that's why I really enjoyed that year. We had so much fun. We had so many shared experiences. We were naughty. We were just living life, being girls. We were girls. We were girls, just girls, right? But what comes with just being girls is boys as well. And there were situations where there were issues in the friendship circle because of boys. It was never between her and I until it did come a time where we did have a situation. And I wasn't completely innocent in the whole situation. I need to put it out there. But it did lead, our situation did lead to a betrayal, and it was her betraying me. And I was just not happy with the whole situation. I was very angry. And I was angry for a very long time. And she was very remorseful. It took some time for her to take accountability, but I did see that she did value the friendship. She just found herself in a situation where she was selfish, and it could have been anyone, to be quite honest with you. And it's just that now that I'm older, I understand that better, and I'm willing to show her grace. But I didn't care. Like, the remorse didn't mean anything to me, because at that time, I really believed that being angry would justify the amount of hurt that I felt because of the betrayal. And I was in a lot of pain during that time, because it was a double betrayal, and it was just so much. It was just so confusing. I was too damn young to go through that. It was just so confusing. I just didn't feel safe. I didn't feel secure. I really felt lost. And a lot was also happening in my personal life in terms of my family. And I think it just didn't fare well. But yeah, we definitely had a break in our friendship because of that situation. And there was a time where our mutual friend brought us together to have a conversation. And we did have a conversation, and we did get to a point where we said, we'd be cordial, we'd be fine. But I was adamant that we could never be friends again, because I just felt like what had happened or what had transpired was unforgivable. I don't know why I thought that, but I did believe that, you know. So I went on with my way, and I don't know why I thought this was correct, but I didn't want anybody to have to pick and choose. So I literally just removed myself from the situation. And it was easier to do so in a sense because I was at a different campus altogether. So I lived in this little bubble, but I did create another friendship that was quite close, that really made me feel good. And I'm very thankful to that person for being there for me during that time, because they really did play a big part, because I felt so lost, you know. But anyway, I think about close to a year passes, where I'm now, you know, in a rhythm where I have completely removed myself from that situation. And I'm sorry, but the details are kind of hard for me right now. And I think it's because I got to a point where I was very hurt by this whole situation, and I was obsessed with the details that I had to start healing. And I've let go of a lot of the details, but I think a year did pass, if I'm not mistaken, or close to a year, or a few months. No, maybe it was a few months actually. But I think back then, few months felt like a very long time. We did actually go to a party. Well, we were at the same party. We didn't go there together. Okay, so we weren't talking to each other anymore as much, but we weren't completely alienated from each other. Um, but I had a closer relationship with somebody else, and she had a closer relationship with our mutual friend. And at this party, it was very random, but my close friend at that time decided to fall asleep, and she came to the party, but then her friend, her close friend, didn't come to the party. So then it was just her and I, and we had a freaking ball. We were very hilarious, by the way. We were very childish. Yeah, yo, we were a mess. We were just so much, we were so spontaneous. When I think about my true fun self, my spontaneity, the level of, you know, it, fun that I could have, I always think about the times that I shared it with her. And when I say that this person was a ball of energy, she was. She was so energetic, so free, so like, come, let's just keep going, you know? And I wish I had that spirit, but I just didn't have it. But that day, I just let everything go and we just had fun. And it felt like 2013 again. It felt like that first year of varsity again. And it was just the best time ever. Very random, very, very random, but it was really great. And then I did see her again, but we didn't greet each other. And it was very weird and random why we're in the same space. But yeah, we just didn't greet each other. There was no beef, and I still don't know till this day why we didn't greet each other. And then the next time I spoke of her or I heard about her was when I learned about her tragic passing, which was very difficult. And I don't know why God has this funny way of doing things, of shaking us up. But for some odd reason, I was then the one who was responsible to let our whole friendship group know that it's confirmed that she had passed on. So the news fell into my lap. It was very confusing. I didn't believe it because we were young. So why are we passing away when we're young? And I remember once I got that message, I instantly said to myself, no, nothing is happening. And I called our mutual friend. She didn't really know what is happening. And she just explained to me that they had actually had plans the day prior and they were supposed to meet and so forth. But something happened and then they couldn't meet and they just thought they'd reschedule to the next day. And she actually really hadn't responded to her messages, but she didn't think much of it because we were young. We do whatever we want to do with our phones. You know, sometimes we respond, sometimes we don't. But she was also very optimistic that nothing has happened. So we just thought it would be fake news. She tried to contact her sister and she didn't get through. And I was a little bit embarrassed and ashamed to contact the family because I felt like, you know, we had been at odds for so long. I don't have the right to do so. I can't do so. But I did it. I had her mom's number because, as I said, we were friends even in high school. And, you know, during those times, parents expect to have children's numbers and all that stuff. So I called her mom. I did. And I won't go into the conversation. I only share this with people that are very intimate with me. But I called her, and it was a bit confusing how she shared the news with me. But I'll never forget how she chose to comfort me in that moment. I got off the phone with her, and it still did not register. I think even till this day, it still hasn't registered. And I then called my friends, and hearing them break down each call, each phone call that I made, hearing each person break down was just so heart-wrenching. And then I got off the phone and I called my mom, and I was shattered. I was completely shattered. It is still, till this day, one of the most painful days I have ever had. And I've lost people, but I can't describe the loss of a young person. Is just not easy. But anyway, I call my mom and I'm completely broken. And it's still not registering, And then we all meet up as friends and we just have like a very us time. It was so unique to us the way we decided to mourn her on that day. It just really reflected us. And it was nice. It was so nice to be back with them again. It was so nice to have that familiarity again. I felt quite alone, and I know I had chosen to be alone because I was still so angry. But it was so great to be welcomed, and they welcomed me with open arms, and it was like nothing had happened, and we shared this experience together, and we held each other's hands throughout it. And yeah, then the funeral came and my mom was there throughout, and she was my strength. When I say that woman has held me through my toughest and the darkest times, I mean it. And during that time was a time I needed her the most, and she showed up. And she was the only person I was willing to be very vulnerable up to about what I was going through and what my mourning looked like then. So I felt very guilty and ashamed, to such a degree that I even struggled to pray because I felt dirty. I felt guilty that I held on to anger when I had many opportunities where we could have restored our friendship and I could have had those last few moments with her. I felt irritated with myself that I was so arrogant to believe that just because we're young, that the next few years are promised and are guaranteed. And they weren't. But she was such a big dreamer. You could never have made me believe that person that brought in so much energy and light into a room would leave this earth. I never, ever could have imagined it. And as I'm actually speaking to you, I'm actually looking at a framed picture of the both of us that she actually gifted me on one of our birthdays. It sits on my bedside table because it's a huge reminder to me about the importance of really honoring the friendships and the relationships that God blesses you with. I haven't completely gotten it right, and I'm not going to say I have, but it is a reminder. So mourning her was very tough because I just felt like I held on to anger for way too long and I missed out on so much. But what got me to a place where I then started to feel a little bit better, because I was just crying a lot. I was so overwhelmed by the pain. It's weird because for a few months leading up to her death, she wasn't a huge part of my life. There was a time where she was my day to day. She was a daily person, or, we had a very, very, very close relationship. And then we had this break, and then, we separated, and I was just like on my own where I was because I was studying medicine in a very different place. And and she wasn't my day to day every day. But when she passed on, that morning overwhelmed me. Her death it made up every part of my day, from the morning, brushing my teeth, to eating something, to I was just so beside myself. I was just crying and crying and crying and crying and crying. It was just so much pain. I didn't even know what to do with the pain. I remember even used to tell myself that I don't think I will ever feel anything as painful as this. I don't think anything will ever come to this. And I would say to her, like, I think you've made me stronger now because you have shown me what true pain is. Like, there's nothing that measures up to this. Like, everything that I thought was painful before you, like before this, is nothing, you know? Even school, your school, I struggled. And that's when my mom started to intervene because it was now reflecting in my grades. Because I was just so overwhelmed. And we had to have a discussion. And I'm so grateful to my mom for having this discussion with me, where she had to explain to me that unfortunately, this is a part of life where you will make decisions and you'll have to live through them, or you have to live with them. Because when you're young, you never think that you're going to have repercussions that are long lasting. You think that, oh, it'll be a demerit and I'll just move through it, right? I have a clean slate soon, right? But death is so final. There is no going back. And she just had to say to me that, Katleho, this is the reality of life. You've now been welcomed into life, into reality, where you now have to take account for the things that you do. And you need to realize that certain things will have lasting repercussions. But another thing that she said to me is that death does not absolve people of their mistakes. So, yes, maybe you shouldn't have held onto the hurt for as long as you did, because you did want to actually have the friendship back. Maybe you should have put your ego aside, but it doesn't change the fact that you were put in that position. And with that, you have to show yourself some sort of compassion. What also helped is that I got that friendship circle back, and I still have those friends till this day. You know, I don't know if it was because of that shared pain that has carried us through, but it's just felt so great that even like a squabble with a friend, you know, yes, I would be angry for a little bit, but we moved past it, because then I remembered that I can't go through that again. If I really care about someone, I really want someone in my life, I can't go through that again. And also a really wonderful thing that came out of it, or that made it easier to then start forgiving myself because I was so ashamed, was having access to her family. So I have some sort of relationship with her sister, which has been amazing. She has been there for actually quite big milestones for me. You know, I think she came for my baby shower. Yeah, I think she did actually come. It was a drive-through baby shower, but I do her makeup. I was supposed to do her wedding makeup, and unfortunately I couldn't. Our times didn't work out. But I wish I was there. And, you know, we do have some conversations here and there, which make me feel like I still have a piece of her. And I'm so grateful she shares her sister with me. And that kind of like made me feel like, okay, if she was truly angry at me, like after passing, she would never allow her sister to come back to me. But anyway, yeah, that has been the sweeter side of it. And also truly understanding the importance of relationships. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean that I will allow someone to get away with doing me wrong just because I'm afraid they'll pass on. With her, things were very different. And they were different because we were young, and there was a lot of remorse. You know. But in any case, it was a lesson to be learned. So now I want us to move to the last part of the conversation, where we actually speak about forgiveness and what that actually could look like, you know. So I was reading on Very Well Mind, and they speak about the 4 R's. But this is actually quite a common, how can I say, teaching, the 4 R's of self-forgiveness. Well, it can also be used for forgiving somebody, right? But the first thing is 1, responsibility. So responsibility implores you to actually introspect and take accountability for what you've done. You need to take account, right? You need to take stock of what has happened. You need to take stock of your what you have done and so forth. But even in doing so, you need to be honest with the situation and honest about the situation and show yourself some compassion. So in my situation, as I said before, I was quite young and I was very arrogant, right? I will never take that away. And I thought we had all this time. I really thought in my mind that we would get to like our 30s, which I'm in now, and we would be in different worlds, but we would come together and we would just be us again. Guys, when I say her and I used to have so much fun, we were crazy, okay? I think we used to stress the hell out of her parents and her mom. And her sister. Definitely used to stress out my mom. We were just crazy. So much fun. But the compassion I do show to myself is that I was put in a position where I I felt betrayed, and that's why I wasn't happy, and that's why we had the break in the friendship. But um, I now know the importance of forgiveness, and I wish I forgave her so that I didn't have to go through a situation of having to forgive myself. But it is also important to understand that, you know, there's no time for regret. So I say that because unless you're something else or someone else, unless you have a gift, we can't really revisit old times. We can't go back in time, right? We don't have that capability. As soon as we have that capability, then we can speak about regret. But you will always make the same choice that you've made to bring you here. And that's why I feel like regret is a useless feeling to have, as an unnecessary torture. Yeah, an unnecessary torture, because there's no way you can go back in time. And regret says that you should have been able to do something because you should have known better. But if you don't know what you know now, how could you have made a different decision then? If, however, you move on with life knowing what you know and you do make the same mistake and you have repercussions, then yes, fine. You can torture yourself with regret. But otherwise, no, don't do it. Okay? And then the next R is remorse. So showing remorse doesn't mean putting yourself through this torture of feeling shameful and guilty, because when you feel shame, you tell yourself that you're a bad person. You keep telling yourself that you are incapable of being good, right? Or you're incapable of anybody extending grace to you. So you won't extend the grace to yourself. You won't be kind to yourself. You won't treat yourself with the compassion that you require. And instead, what happens is you keep holding on to that guilt, and it won't do anything for you. It's not conducive. It will just move you to a situation where you can have things like addiction, depression, and aggression, because you feeling worthless, and these feelings are left unresolved, right? So it's important to understand that making mistakes that you feel guilty about does not make you a bad person or undermine your intrinsic value. Okay. And then restoration, right? So with the remorse must come change behavior. And that's how you start to restore either the relationship with yourself, or restore whatever you feel needs to be restored, or restore another relationship with someone else where you have felt that you've hurt this person, right? But when you ask for forgiveness from somebody, it goes beyond actually having that remorse and showing that you do take accountability. It has to be change behavior. So you actually making active steps to not repeat the past. So with me, it's still shaky here. I'm still I still kind of hold on. And I don't know if it's because of my sign. We're really not as forgiving. We move on. It's done, But it is important to, get to a place where if you want to feel restored, is by having that change behavior. And then that renewal, obviously, which is the last R, would be a renewed sense of self, where after you've had all these drawbacks, where after you've looked at yourself and you've expressed the remorse and you've shown yourself some compassion and you're trying to restore everything, that you move with a certain restoration of yourself. And you do also extend to yourself that, I can be a different person. So I don't have to be Katleho who made that mistake anymore. I can be another Katleho, okay? Because I am making the steps. I am being intentional in how I want to move forward. But then let's also speak about the importance and the benefits of forgiving yourself. Let's look at mental health. Obviously, if you're feeling the shame and the guilt, you're going to feel worthlessness, and that could lead to feelings of anger, could lead to feelings of depression and so forth, which is not conducive for you, right? You need to show yourself compassion, because you spend a lot of time in your mind. So that place needs to feel quite safe. It needs to feel like a place that you can always find refuge in. But when you are struggling with forgiving yourself and shaming yourself and building this monster of that inner critic, it's going to be quite difficult. And that will also lead to you not being as productive, not being focused, lacking concentration, and so forth. So it is quite important to have self-compassion. And then physical health, we all know that your mental health can play a huge role in how your body will behave, right? So there are physiological effects from how we think and the things that we allow to really stress our bodies. Stress can show itself physically. It can increase your blood pressure. It can put you in a situation where you could have a cardiovascular effects, right? And also, people who do struggle with feelings of depression and so forth, there are behaviors that can come with that can make you unhealthy. Like maybe you eating too much, or you're not eating at all, or you physically inactive, or you're putting yourself in situations where you want to forget and you're picking up addictions or whatever that can have a physical attribute to it, or consequence rather. And then relationships. So you will only realize how terrible you are to yourself when somebody gets the effects of that. So the compassion that you struggle to give to yourself, you'll struggle to give to others, right? Which will make it difficult for you to relate to people. So if you struggle to forgive yourself, if you're hypercritical of yourself, if you're very hard on yourself, and you just won't let things go, it will be extended to other people, because it doesn't end there. We don't just have these thoughts and it just stops with ourselves. We do it to others, okay? And that's when it'll start becoming quite real and evident to you that, you're really struggling with this. So it is quite important to have that forgiveness for yourself, because it will allow you to also relate to people in a different way. And also, if you are unhappy with yourself, it's very difficult for you to be happy with other people. Not even just happy for them, but happy with them, And to have those close emotional bonds where people can feel safe with you, you need to feel safe with yourself, and you need to be able to be vulnerable, But you can't be vulnerable if you feel very ashamed and guilty and all that stuff. So with that, that's quite a great benefit to it. And then on this article, they actually even speak about challenges of forgiving yourself. And I think you can read up more on that. But what I wanted to get you to understand is that we have all been in situations where we have let ourselves down. All of us. Nobody's perfect, okay? We have all been in situations where we've hurt other people, where we have made mistakes that have been detrimental in some way or the other. We have done things that have, put us in situations where we have lasting repercussions, okay? But there's no use, if you're still living and you're still breathing, that you stop your life and you stop having comfort in yourself because you made that mistake. If you're willing to be aware of it, willing to take responsibility for it, then it will come to the remorse, it will come to the changed behavior, and then you can restore yourself again, and you can move on with a renewed sense of self. You owe it to yourself as long as you're living, and you owe it to those around you, to those people that you love, which will then ultimately always bring back to yourself as well, right? But remember, we're trying to find home in ourselves, and to be in that cozy corner in your mind or in your life or in your mental, you need to be able to show yourself compassion and grace, and you need to forgive yourself. Okay, that is the last episode of the season. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. It's been 12 weeks? 12 weeks of talking, of engaging, of sharing, of being vulnerable. And it has done so much for me. And I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to share these intimate parts of myself with you, and that you've received it so well. And yeah, I can't wait to see you in the second season, where you'll meet me in my corner on a Wednesday again.